So have you heard about how Ireland has become like the place for international businesses? I was reading something the other day about it being super popular, like one of the top spots in Europe. And it's not just because of the scenery.
Yeah, the scenery is nice, but you're right. It's more than that.
Right.
The Irish government has been really smart about it, making it really appealing for businesses to set up shop, especially when it comes to taxes and stuff.
Makes sense. Lower taxes, more businesses. But, it made me think about how tricky it can be to actually expand a business overseas. I mean, every country has their own like laws and rules about HR, taxes, all that. Where do you even begin?
You're totally right. That can be a huge roadblock for companies. They're ready to go global, but then bam, paperwork.
Yeah.
But there are ways to make it easier, especially with Ireland.
Okay, so spill the beans. What's the secret?
Have you ever heard of a PEO?
A PEO? Is that like a fancy coffee drink?
No. It stands for Professional Employer Organization. It's basically a partner that helps you with all those tricky HR and legal things. When you're expanding to a new country, think of it like having a local expert on your side from day one.
So they kind of handle all the nitty-gritty details so you can just focus on your business.
Exactly. And there's this company, INS Global, they specialize in this, especially when it comes to Ireland. And get this, they can get your employees hired or transferred over there in just 48 hours.
Wow. 48 hours. That's incredible. But why would a company go with a PEO? I mean, instead of just setting up their own office in Ireland?
Well, first off, it can save a ton of money. Setting up a whole separate legal thing in a new country, that's expensive and time-consuming. But with PEO, like INS Global, you can skip all that and get started way faster. Plus, they make sure you're always following all the Irish employment laws, so you avoid any legal issues.
Okay, compliance, that can be a real nightmare to navigate. So INS Global keeps you in the loop even if regulations change.
Yes. They're like your outsourced HR department, making sure you stay on the right side of the law. And it's not just the basic HR stuff either. They can handle recruitment, payroll, tax administration, you name it. Basically everything you need for your workforce in Ireland.
So it sounds pretty comprehensive. What about the employees? How does using a PEO impact them?
It usually means happier employees.
Happier employees.
Yeah, they get paid on time, their benefits are all sorted out, and they know their rights are protected under Irish law. And you know what that means. Less turnover, higher morale, and a more productive team overall.
I can definitely see the appeal. So using a PEO sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Are there any times when it makes more sense to just incorporate the old-fashioned way?
Absolutely. If you're a big company and you're planning on being in Ireland for the long haul, then yeah, incorporating might be better. But for most companies, especially smaller ones or ones that need to get going quickly, a PEO like INS Global is the smarter move.
So it's about picking the right strategy for your company.
Right. And even if you're not sure, think about this. Using a PEO can be like 80% cheaper than incorporating, and you can launch in Ireland in just a couple of days.
Right.
Versus like 6 months or more if you do it the traditional way.
Whoa, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Are there any stats on how this impacts employee turnover or anything like that?
You bet. Businesses that use a PEO see about 14% less employee turnover, and they usually get a 27% return on their investment.
Those are some seriously impressive numbers. Okay, let's say I'm sold. I want to work with INS Global. What happens next? What's the process like?
It's actually pretty straightforward. They start by chatting with you, to understand what your goals are, what you need in Ireland, all that. Then they'll come up with a customized plan just for you. No one-size-fits-all stuff here.
So they find the best fit for each company. Okay, what then?
INS Global takes the reins from there. They manage everything, hiring staff on your behalf, onboarding, all the administrative stuff like registration, taxes, all that.
Wait, they even handle the hiring? That's amazing. Such a time saver.
Exactly. And it makes sure everything's done correctly. And that means you and your employees can focus on actually doing the work, no getting bogged down in HR stuff.
Huge relief. Now, we've talked a lot about PEOs, but I know INS Global also has something called an EOR. Can you break that down for us? Like, what is it and how is it different from a PEO?
Sure. EOR stands for Employer of Record. It's similar to a PEO, but there's one key difference. With a PEO, you still have the contract with your employees. The PEO just helps with the admin stuff. But with an EOR, INS Global actually becomes the legal employer of your staff in Ireland. So they're fully responsible for payroll, taxes, compliance, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so it's about how hands-on you want to be. And INS Global offers both.
They do. They know every business has different needs. They're all about finding the right fit.
That's great. Okay, let's dive into the actual experience of working in Ireland. What are some of the essential things to know about Irish labor law?
One of the most important things to remember is that Ireland has very strong laws about treating all employees equally. It doesn't matter if they're full-time, part-time, or on a fixed-term contract. Everyone gets the same rights and benefits.
Sounds fair. What about those employment contracts? Are there strict rules around those?
Actually, Ireland's pretty flexible when it comes to contracts. Employers and employees can negotiate terms that work for both of them.
So a more collaborative approach.
Exactly. But there are a few key things every contract needs: place of work, how long it's for, pay rate, working hours, and any rules for sick leave or injury. It all needs to be written out clearly.
Transparency is key. Makes sense. What about probation periods? Are those common over there?
Yeah, pretty common. Legally, they can last up to 12 months, but most companies go for shorter periods, like 3 to 6 months, and those terms need to be in writing from the beginning.
Got it. Okay, so how many hours can people work each week in Ireland? Are there laws about that?
Yes, Irish law sets the maximum average work week at 48 hours.
Good to know there are safeguards to keep people from getting burnt out.
Oh, absolutely. And there are rules about breaks, too. Employees need a 15-minute break after 4.5 hours of work and at least 30 minutes if they work 6 hours.
So all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right?
Definitely. And speaking of play, employees in Ireland get at least 20 paid vacation days a year, plus 9 public holidays.
That's pretty awesome. But what about if an employee gets sick? Is there paid sick leave in Ireland?
That's where it gets a little tricky. Ireland doesn't have a required sick pay system like some other countries in Europe.
Oh, wow. So what happens if someone can't work because they're sick?
It depends on the company. Some, especially bigger ones, have their own sick pay policies. But if they don't, employees might have to rely on social welfare benefits, if they qualify, that is.
Got it. So it's something businesses need to be aware of and plan for.
For sure. Factoring sick pay into your budget is smart, and a PEO like INS Global can help you figure out the best way to do it. Okay, let's talk about parental leave. It's another big part of Irish labor law.
Great. What should new parents know about their rights?
Well, with maternity leave, women can take 42 weeks off after they give their employer 4 weeks' notice.
42 weeks. That's almost a whole year.
Yeah, it is. This includes 26 weeks of regular maternity leave and then 16 more weeks of additional leave. The law says they need to take at least 2 weeks before the baby's born and 4 weeks after.
That makes sense. Does the employer have to pay the employee during that time?
Unfortunately, employers aren't required to pay during maternity leave, but the good news is the government provides a benefit that's 80% of the employee's usual salary for the first 26 weeks. The other 16 weeks are unpaid, though.
So there's some support, at least for the first part. What about for fathers or partners? What are their parental leave rights?
Ireland has good paternity leave laws. It covers all fathers, even if they're self-employed in same-sex relationships or adopted a child.
That's awesome. So how much time do they get?
2 weeks of paid leave, which they have to use within 26 weeks of the baby being born.
Okay, not as long as mothers, but still something. And that's paid by the employer, right?
Actually, like with maternity leave, the employer isn't required to pay for it, but the employee can get paternity benefits from the state.
Good to know there are options, even if it doesn't come from the employer. Okay, let's move on to taxes and Social Security in Ireland. What are the key things businesses need to know?
Well, they have a payee system, which means pay as you earn. So income tax and Social Security contributions are taken directly from employees' salaries each time they get paid.
So like many other countries.
Right. The main difference is they use a tax credit system instead of a tax allowance system. Basically, you figure out the tax based on income, then subtract any tax credits.
Okay, what are the actual tax rates?
Personal income tax can be anywhere from 20% to 40%. Depends on how much you make and your situation. Corporate tax is 12.5% for trading companies and 25% for non-trading.
All right, and those Social Security contributions, what percentage does the employer pay?
As of 2022, employers contribute 8.8% of each employee's salary.
So yeah, there's a lot to keep track of. Sounds like another reason why having INS Global on your side is a good idea.
Totally agree. They manage all that complexity for you, making sure you're following all the rules in Ireland.
Speaking of INS Global, one of their clients, Manuel Ramos, who's the managing director of Payroll Asia, had a great quote about working with them.
He said, "We think INS Global is a good solution for starting a business in new and complex markets. Understanding a market doesn't mean you need to set up a company immediately.
That's a really good point. You can, like, test the waters before diving in head first.
Exactly. And a PEO helps you do that.
Right. Before we move on, let's tackle some FAQs about PEOs. First one, can a company just use their existing structure to hire employees in Ireland?
Nope, sorry. To be legit under Irish labor law, you need a local entity in Ireland to employ people.
Okay, so does that mean companies have to set up a local entity?
Not necessarily. That's where the PEO comes in handy. You can either start a subsidiary in Ireland or use a PEO like INS Global, who'll act as the local employer of record.
So there are options. Just to clarify, can you remind us what an employer of record is?
Sure. It's the legal entity that's responsible for the employees in that country. So it'd be either the company's Irish branch or the PEO.
And what kind of things are they responsible for?
It depends on the country's laws, but generally things like contracts, payroll, taxes, social security, expenses, hiring and firing processes, all that jazz.
Okay, so everything HR related. How long does it usually take a company to get set up in Ireland using a PEO?
That's the beauty of it. With a PEO like INS Global, it can take less than a month.
Wow, that's fast. What if a company goes the traditional route and sets up a subsidiary?
Much longer. It could take 4 to 12 months, sometimes even longer depending on the situation.
So if you need to move quickly, a PEO is the way to go.
Definitely, it's much more efficient.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive into expanding to Ireland. We've talked about why Ireland is such a hot market, what PEOs and EORs are, the benefits of working with INS Global, and even got into some specifics of Irish labor law.
It's a lot to take in. Hopefully, it's useful for anyone thinking about expanding to Ireland.
Absolutely. And there's more to come. In the next part, we'll be taking a closer look at INS Global Services and see some real examples of how they've helped businesses succeed in Ireland.
We'll also talk about why Ireland is such a magnet for international business and what opportunities are out there for companies like yours.
We'll see you in part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive on expanding to Ireland.
Okay, so last time we were talking about why Ireland is so popular with companies looking to expand and how using a PEO like INS Global can make things so much easier.
Yeah, we covered a lot of the basics, but now I want to get into the nitty-gritty of what INS Global actually does. Like, what makes their PEO services in Ireland stand out?
Right. It's not just about finding office space. It's about figuring out the whole hiring process, payroll, contracts, all that fun stuff.
Exactly. And that's where their local expertise is so valuable. They're not just throwing generic solutions around. They tailor their services to each business that's expanding into Ireland.
So it's like having a team in Ireland working just for you.
Exactly. Let's take payroll, for instance. That can be a real headache when you're dealing with different currencies and taxes and regulations, but INS Global takes care of all of that for you.
So they handle, like, everything. Calculating salaries, taking out taxes, making sure everyone gets paid on time, even dealing with those Social Security contributions we talked about.
Yep, the whole 9 yards. And they make sure it's all done right and that you're always in line with Irish law. And remember, they're the experts on Irish labor law, so if anything changes, they've got you covered.
It's great to have that peace of mind, especially for companies that are new to the Irish market. What about employment contracts? I know we said that Ireland is pretty flexible, but there's still a lot to consider, right?
Absolutely. And INS Global can help you navigate all of that. They'll work with you to create contracts that not only follow Irish law, but that also work for your specific company.
So they consider things like probation periods, working hours, vacation time, all those things we talked about.
Yep. All of that. They make sure everything is clear, that it protects both you and your employees, and that it's all legal and above board. And they can help you with those trickier parts of the law, like sick leave and parental leave.
It's like having an HR lawyer on your team, but without the crazy fees.
Right. There's one more thing I wanted to touch on that people sometimes forget about. Cultural differences. I mean, even though everyone speaks English in Ireland, there are still cultural things that could impact how you do business there.
That's a great point. And I know INS Global has people on the ground in Ireland, so they're not just experts in the law, but in the culture too.
Exactly. They can give you advice on everything from communication styles to workplace etiquette, so you can really blend into the Irish business scene.
They're like a cultural guide and an HR expert all rolled into one. But I think the biggest thing that keeps companies up at night when they're expanding overseas is compliance, making sure they're following all the rules. How does INS Global help with that?
Compliance is their specialty. They're experts in Irish employment law, tax laws, health and safety rules, data protection, you name it. And they make sure you're doing everything by the book. So you're operating legally and ethically.
So they're always up to date on any changes in regulations?
Oh, absolutely. And they'll let you know if you need to adjust anything so you can stay ahead of the game and avoid any nasty surprises down the line.
I can see how that'd be a huge weight off a business owner's shoulders. But can you give us some real-world examples of how INS Global has helped companies succeed in Ireland?
Oh, tons. There was this tech startup from the US that wanted to get into the European market, and they chose Ireland because it's a big hub for tech talent, but they were a bit scared of setting up a legal entity and dealing with all the bureaucracy.
Sounds like a lot of companies. So
Yeah.
what did INS Global do for them?
They came in and offered a complete PEO solution. They helped the company hire a bunch of software developers in Dublin and handled everything from contracts to payroll to taxes. The startup was up and running in just a few weeks and could focus on developing their product and launching in Europe.
That's fantastic. Sounds like INS Global took care of everything. Do you have any other examples?
Sure. There was this marketing agency from Asia that wanted to tap into the creative talent in Ireland, but they were worried that using a PEO would be too expensive.
I bet they were pleasantly surprised.
You bet. INS Global worked with them to create a plan that fit their budget, and they helped the agency build a remote team in Ireland and took care of all the HR stuff like payroll, benefits, and compliance. The agency ended up saving a lot of money and could expand their operations much quicker.
So it's all about finding the right solution for each company. That's awesome. But I want to talk about why Ireland itself is such a good choice for businesses that want to expand internationally. What makes it so appealing?
It's a few things. First of all, Ireland has a really well-educated and skilled workforce, especially in areas like tech, finance, and pharmaceuticals.
And it's in a great location, right? It's a gateway to the rest of Europe.
Exactly. And since almost everyone speaks English, it makes it really easy for international companies to communicate and do business. And the government is very pro-business and offers good tax incentives.
I've heard they have a great work-life balance too, which is becoming more important to people these days.
Oh, absolutely. There's a really vibrant culture, a rich history, and the scenery is beautiful. It's a great place to live and work.
It sounds like they have it all. So for companies thinking about expanding to Ireland, what are some of the biggest opportunities they should be aware of?
Well, the tech sector is booming in Ireland. There are lots of big global players there like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. So if you're in tech, there's a ton of talent and a really supportive environment for your business to grow.
What about other industries? Anything beyond tech?
Of course. Pharmaceuticals and life sciences are also doing really well in Ireland, partly because of government support and a very skilled workforce. And the financial services sector is growing too, especially in areas like fintech and investment management.
So there really is something for everyone. But even with all these amazing opportunities, I know a lot of companies are scared to take that first step and expand globally. What advice would you give to them?
I would say don't let fear hold you back. The world is so interconnected these days, and global expansion is where the real growth potential is.
It's about thinking bigger and seeing the whole world as your market.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Partners like INS Global can help you every step of the way and make it way less scary.
So it's not just that they're experts on Ireland, they're experts on global expansion in general.
Yes, they can help you figure out the best strategy for your business, and they'll be there to support you all the way.
If you're thinking about expanding to Ireland, reach out to INS Global today and tell them about your project. They can help you achieve your global ambitions.
They're the experts when it comes to making your expansion to Ireland a success.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about why Ireland is such a great market for businesses, all about PEOs and EORs, and the huge benefits of partnering with INS Global. What are your final thoughts on why Ireland is such a great place for businesses right now?
I think it's that unique combination of a skilled workforce, a business-friendly environment, a strategic location, and a vibrant culture. It's the perfect recipe for success, so it's no surprise that so many companies are choosing Ireland as their entry point into Europe and beyond.
It's a dynamic and exciting place to be, and with the right partner, expanding there doesn't have to be a headache. What's the one thing you want our listeners to remember from today?
I want them to remember that global expansion is possible. It might seem daunting, but with the right support, it can be an amazing journey.
A journey that can lead to new markets, new customers, and a whole new level of success for your business. Well said. We'll be back for the third and final part of our deep dive, where we'll walk you through exactly how to get started with INS Global and what to expect along the way. All right, so we're back. We've talked about why Ireland is so great for businesses, the ins and outs of PEOs and EORs, and how INS Global can be a game changer for your expansion plans.
Now it's time to get practical.
Exactly. Let's say you're ready to take the plunge and work with INS Global. What are the actual steps involved?
Well, the first step is simple. Just reach out to INS Global and tell them what you're thinking. Your vision for expanding to Ireland.
So just pick up the phone and give them a call.
Yeah, pretty much. Their team's great, really easy to talk to, and they'll walk you through everything.
Okay, so let's say I'm interested and Ireland is on my radar. What happens after that first call?
INS Global wants to get to know your company a bit. So they'll ask about your specific needs, your industry, who you're targeting in Ireland, even your company culture.
So they tailor their approach to each business.
Absolutely. No cookie-cutter solutions here. They want to make sure the strategy they create fits you perfectly and sets you up for success in Ireland.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
So once they have a good understanding of your business, what's next?
Well, that's where their expertise really kicks in. They'll show you different options and explain the pros and cons of each, like whether a PEO or an EOR is better, or maybe a combination of both. They'll help you figure out what's best for your company.
So you don't have to try to decode all those acronyms and figure it all out yourself.
Exactly. They'll guide you through it. I know a lot of business owners get nervous about the legal stuff, especially with regulations in a new country, but INS Global takes care of all that for you.
They're like your legal guardian angels.
Haha, yeah, something like that. Their legal team is fantastic, and they'll make sure you're following all the Irish labor laws, tax regulations, everything. You can relax and know everything's being handled properly.
That's a huge weight off your shoulders. So we've got the strategy, the legal side covered, but what about the actual team in Ireland, the people who will be running things on the ground?
INS Global can help with that too. They've got a great recruitment team that can help you find the right people for your team in Ireland. Whether you need local experts or you want to move employees from your current team, they can make it happen.
Wow, it's amazing that they offer so many services. It's like a one-stop shop for global expansion.
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of one-stop shops, they handle payroll too, which is a huge help for businesses expanding overseas.
I can imagine dealing with payroll in a different country can be a nightmare. How does INS Global handle that for Ireland?
They make it really easy. They process everything in euros, make sure everyone gets paid on time, handle all the tax deductions and Social Security contributions, even manage benefits administration.
So it's like having your own finance department in Ireland without the extra cost?
Exactly. And because they're always on top of any changes in regulations, you don't have to worry about compliance. Your payroll will always be accurate and up to date.
So we've talked about all the different pieces, strategy, legal stuff, recruitment, payroll. But what would you say is the best part about working with INS Global?
Honestly, I think it's the peace of mind they give you, knowing that you have a partner who really gets the Irish market and will take care of all the legal and administrative things for you. That's invaluable. It lets you focus on what matters most, which is growing your business.
They help you turn that fear of the unknown into excitement and confidence.
Yes, INS Global gives you the power to take that leap and make your global dreams a reality.
So for our listeners who are ready to take that leap, what's the one thing you want them to remember?
Don't wait. The Irish market is full of opportunities, but it's also competitive. The sooner you start looking into it, the sooner you can start seeing those benefits of expanding globally.
And INS Global is ready to help.
Of course. They can't wait to hear about your business and help you create a successful expansion plan for Ireland. Reach out to them today and tell them about your project. You won't be disappointed.
So if you're feeling that pull towards Ireland, if you see your business growing there, what are you waiting for? Get in touch with INS Global and let them be your guide. They can help you make your Irish adventure a huge success.
It all starts with a conversation.
That's so true. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into expanding to Ireland. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another topic, ready to give you the info and insights you need to succeed in the world of business. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those entrepreneurial dreams alive.
And remember, the world is your oyster.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.